According to the information reported by the Financial Times, officials in Washington have conveyed to their counterparts in Kyiv that security guarantees from the United States would be provided only after Ukraine successfully reaches a peace agreement with Russia. Such an agreement, according to the reporting, would likely require Ukraine to make territorial concessions in the Donbas region, an area that has been at the center of conflict for more than a decade. Ukraine's position on this matter has been notably different. Kyiv has consistently maintained that it seeks to secure firm security guarantees before agreeing to any arrangement that would involve the loss of territory. This represents a fundamental difference in sequencing that lies at the heart of the current diplomatic tension. President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated in public remarks that robust security guarantees are an essential component of any peace agreement that Ukraine might consider. He has emphasized that such guarantees are necessary to prevent the possibility of a renewed Russian invasion in the future. In earlier statements, President Zelensky had indicated that security guarantees between the United States and Ukraine were, in his words, 100% ready, and he had expressed hope that formal documents could be signed within the current month. Speaking to reporters on January 25th, the Ukrainian president underscored the centrality of American involvement in any security framework. He stated that for Ukraine, security guarantees are first and foremost guarantees from the United States, highlighting the degree to which Kyiv views Washington's commitment as critical to its future security posture. The approach being taken by the Trump administration has been characterized in strongly critical terms by Ukrainian and European officials who spoke to the Financial Times. These officials described the reported strategy as an attempt to compel Kyiv into making painful territorial concessions, while suggesting that Moscow has shown no indication of any willingness to offer reciprocal compromises in return. However, a United States source who is said to be familiar with the matter provided a different characterization when speaking to the Kyiv Independent. This source stated that Washington is not attempting to force any territorial concessions upon Ukraine. The source added that both sides must agree to a peace deal, but emphasized that the specific contents of any such agreement are matters to be decided between Russia and Ukraine themselves. The source did not provide additional details or elaboration on this position. Russia has maintained for an extended period that Ukrainian forces must withdraw from the Donbas region. Moscow is now explicitly tying any future peace agreement to such a withdrawal, following more than a decade of armed conflict in the area. This represents a long-standing Russian demand that has remained consistent throughout the course of the war. Ukraine has ruled out the possibility of a complete withdrawal from the region. However, Ukrainian officials have indicated that alternative security arrangements could potentially be considered. Among the possibilities that have been mentioned are the establishment of a demilitarized zone in parts of the contested territory. The United States has also reportedly introduced the concept of creating a free economic zone in certain parts of the war-affected region, though details of such a proposal have not been fully disclosed. As what is described as an additional incentive in the negotiation process, the United States has reportedly offered to provide Ukraine with additional weapons and military equipment that would be used to equip the Ukrainian armed forces during the post-war period. Despite this reported offer, a senior Ukrainian official has expressed concern that it is becoming increasingly uncertain whether Washington is genuinely prepared to undertake binding security commitments to Ukraine. The current territorial situation in the Donbas region reflects years of conflict and shifting control. Luhansk Oblast is almost entirely under Russian control at this stage. In contrast, Ukraine continues to hold significant parts of Donetsk Oblast, where the Ukrainian military has constructed what are described as its most extensive and heavily fortified defensive positions. These defensive lines represent a strategic asset that Ukrainian military planners consider vital to the defense of the broader region. Ukrainian officials have issued warnings about the potential consequences if Russia were to succeed in seizing these defensive fortifications. According to these officials, Russian control of Ukraine's defensive line in Donetsk Oblast would provide Moscow with a significant strategic advantage that could be exploited for future military operations targeting neighboring regions. This assessment underscores the importance that Kyiv attaches to maintaining control of these positions. According to information obtained by the Kyiv Independent, officials in Washington are hoping to advance the peace process toward what they describe as its final culmination during the upcoming round of talks scheduled for February 1st. However, the same reporting indicates that Moscow has not yet demonstrated any readiness to accept the proposals that are currently under discussion. The most difficult and contentious issues that are expected to dominate the negotiation agenda include Russian demands for Ukrainian withdrawal from parts of the Donbas region. Additionally, the question of control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is set to be a central point of discussion. These two issues represent fundamental points of disagreement between the parties and are likely to prove challenging to resolve. At this stage, the diplomatic process remains in active motion, with the next round of talks approaching. The positions of the key parties involved reflect significant gaps that have yet to be bridged. Ukraine maintains its insistence on receiving security guarantees before making territorial concessions, while the United States has reportedly outlined a different sequence in which guarantees would follow the conclusion of a peace agreement. The role of Russia in these discussions remains a critical factor. Moscow's stated demands have remained consistent, and according to the available information, Russian officials have not indicated flexibility on their core positions regarding territorial control in the Donbas region and other contested areas. The diplomatic environment surrounding these talks reflects the complexity of attempting to resolve a conflict that has continued for more than a decade and has intensified significantly in recent years. The stakes involved are substantial, touching on questions of territorial integrity, security architecture, and the future strategic landscape of the region. As the February 1st talks approach, officials from all sides will be watching closely to determine whether meaningful progress can be achieved. The outcome of these discussions could have far-reaching implications for the future of Ukraine, the broader security situation in Europe, and the relationship between Russia and Western nations. The information currently available does not provide clarity on whether the gaps between the positions of Ukraine, Russia, and the United States can be successfully bridged in the upcoming round of negotiations. What is known is that the talks represent a moment of active diplomatic engagement following President Trump's stated intention to pursue a resolution to the conflict. The concerns expressed by Ukrainian officials about the nature of the security guarantees being discussed reflect deeper anxieties about Ukraine's long-term security position. Without firm commitments that Ukraine considers credible and binding, there remains significant reluctance in Kyiv to consider arrangements that would involve territorial losses. The question of what specific security guarantees might look like in practice has not been fully detailed in the available reporting. The extent to which any such guarantees would involve military commitments, economic support, or other forms of assurance remains a matter that is presumably being discussed in the confidential diplomatic channels between the parties. The February talks will take place against a backdrop of ongoing military realities on the ground. The territorial control exercised by each side, the positioning of forces, and the state of defensive fortifications all represent factors that influence the negotiating positions of the parties involved. At present, the diplomatic process continues to unfold. Further information about the positions of the parties and the progress of negotiations may become available as the talks proceed, and as officials provide additional statements or briefings. The situation remains in active development, and the outcomes of the upcoming discussions are not yet determined.